This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome. Welcome to the April monthly partnership meeting of the Southeast and Caribbean Disaster Resilience Partnership, commonly known by the acronym SCDRP. Greetings from Jacksonville, Florida. My name is Heather McCarthy, and I have the honor and pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of SCDRP. And thank you so much for joining us today. Here is our agenda for today. First, I have an SCDRP staff update for you. Second, a quick look at SCDRP's current membership profile. And then we will hear from today's super speaker, Derek Frohbieter from the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, Division of Emergency Management. He will show us the FIMAN tool, the North Carolina Flood Inundation Mapping and Alert Network. Next, a look ahead at an exciting upcoming member opportunity. You will pick our summer speakers. And the final minutes of today's meeting will be partner sharing. So please be ready to share collaborative initiatives, research findings, funding sources, job openings, professional meetings, webinars, training opportunities, and other relevant regional news and announcements. An SCDRP staff update. Our SCDRP program coordinator, Tina Jackson, will be leaving us on April 30th to pursue her PhD in wildlife ecology at Purdue University. So today we want to thank her for bringing her talents and skills to SCDRP and wish her all the best in her new adventure in Indiana. Tina, would you like to say a few parting words to our partners? See if Tina.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for the background noise. I'm in the field today. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed my time here. I learned a lot. I really enjoyed working with everybody at SCDRP, and I hope to stay involved as a member while I'm pursuing my PhD, but I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Aw, fantastic. You will be missed, Tina. Tina, where are you today and what are you doing?
I am in Georgia, up in the mountains, doing bridge and culvert surveys for bats.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking time out to meet with the partnership today. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. So the SCDRP hiring committee has completed a successful search for Tina's replacement, and we had such an outstanding applicant pool offering a wide variety of talents, skills, and experiences to SCDRP. So a big, big thank you to those of you that applied or sent applicants our way. And we are so excited to introduce to you our new program coordinator next month. So I've been taking a closer look at the trends in SCDRP membership over time, and it's so interesting that I thought I would share some of the graphs with you today. Here are pie charts of SCDRP membership by professional sector. So in January 2023, following 2 years of virtual meetings due to COVID, SCDRP was predominantly academic, about 32%, followed by private sector, about 25%. But then after our meeting in Miami, membership took a slight shift with more private sector representatives joining, totaling the greatest portion of SCDRP membership at 21%, followed by academics at 19%, followed by equal portions from federal, local, and governments and nonprofit, each coming in at 13%. And then following our meeting in Savannah, SCDRP has seen a significant increase in the number of members with nonprofit affiliations, 29%, followed by private sector professionals and then academics. And we've also seen an increase in the numbers from state government, while relative decreases in the number of members from local and federal governments. So kind of interesting. Here's the SCDRP membership by state or territory, and this reflects shifts in membership over time that can be generally tied to the location of our annual meeting. So take a look. 2 years ago, SCDRP members were predominantly from Florida, followed by South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia, with smaller representation from Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, and a handful of other states. But then after our annual meeting in Miami, where we made strides to collaborate with Caribbean professionals, 11% of our membership lived and worked in the Caribbean. And Florida members continue to remain the largest contingent, followed by North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Noting this, we hosted our next annual meeting in Georgia, and the expected and needed influx of Georgia members happened. So today, 39% of us are from Georgia, followed by South Carolina, Florida, and North Carolina. So based on this, where should we hold our next annual meeting? Perhaps North Carolina? We shall see. Discussions will commence this summer. And now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you today's super speaker, Derek Frohbieter. Derek Frohbieter is the Flood Inundation and Alert Mapping Network, or FIMAN, manager for the state of North Carolina. FIMAN is a statewide network of federal, state, county, and municipal stream gauges that constantly measure water levels throughout North Carolina. The goal of FIMAN is to serve flood inundation information and alerts to the residents of North Carolina and provide early warning to potential hazards for emergency management personnel. Derek has previous experience with water resources from his work with the U.S. Geological Survey in Alaska, where he worked in the Anchorage and Fairbanks field offices for a total of 8 years as a hydrologic technician. Derek started working for the state of North Carolina in 2021 after serving 4 years active duty in the Marine Corps as an artillery officer. And Derek continues to serve in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve. As a side, thank you for your service, Derek. So I've been hearing so much about the FIMAN system and how some of the features of this potentially life-saving tool could be applied to other locations. So we are extremely honored to have you walk us through the FIMAN platform today. Derek, a warm welcome to you and a big thanks for taking time to share your knowledge and experiences with the partnership today.
Thank you very much, Heather. That was quite the introduction. Made me sound much cooler than I actually am. So I'm going to share my screen with you all and see if we can get this guy going here. Just checking to make sure that everybody can see what I'm sharing. Perfect.
Looks good.
Okay, so as Heather was saying, FIMAN, our Flood Inundation Mapping and Alert Network, it's quite a mouthful for a very useful and important tool here in North Carolina that we utilize in pretty much every major storm or incident that goes on. Our director works in tandem with other government agencies, and even the governor pulls data from FIMAN to give updates to the public. So it's pretty important, and we really like where we're at right now. It's been a long time coming for it to get to where it's at. So FIMAN, again, Heather, thank you for that introduction and kind of restating our goals. We provide the real-time flood inundation for the public, try and get them alerts and everything that's in areas of concern for them. We're trying to leverage all of our data to get that information out to the public from multiple sources. We use the USGS stream gauges, NOAA collaborative gauges for our federal inputs. We also have gauges that we own as the state agency that I and many others have been implementing and installing across the state. And then we also have collaborative relationships with both municipal and county governments to install and maintain stream gauges in their areas. So we have a small stream gauge program where counties can purchase gauges, and then FIMAN the NCEM will take them over and kind of do all the maintenance and stuff on them, go out, do the checks, and pull in that data just to make sure that we get as much coverage as we possibly can, and making it a little bit of ownership at the lower levels, even to be able to kind of like add that information to FIMAN. Yep, I lost it. There we go. So for the bigger question is, what is FIMAN? And it's a system of multiple things that we've tried to integrate and become like the most robust possible reporting, I guess, platform for the public. So we take gauge data and sorry, let me go back one more. Well, we'll keep going. There we go. We take our stream gauge data and we'll pull it into a data platform for consolidation. We utilize Contrail. That's a one-rain platform and product that might be something that everybody's kind of heard about out there, but we utilize that platform to bring in all that information, put it in one place, and then our output to the FIMAN website is where everybody can see that collaboration come together. So this information exists out to the public. If you were to go to the USGS website, you could see all their data. We're just simply taking that data and putting it with our gauges and other gauges that are collaboration so that everybody can see, what all data is possible in their area. So when you go into FIMAN and you click on a gauge, like what are you looking at and what are you looking for? We have a tabular view. So anybody that goes on there and clicks on a gauge, this is the first thing they see is what the current status is for those gauges. And for example, you'll have several stations that'll either have just the current status or they'll have a scenario and a forecast. And those two tabs I'll go into a little bit later. But so the current inundation view is kind of the symbology is given as that circular is the indication of what that gauge is. In this instance, this is the Tar River Tarboro. It's a USGS gauge, so they actually also have flow information. Many of the state gauges, we just concern ourselves about water level, so that's all we care about is the inundation. But since the USGS pulls in that data, we also service that to the public. A lot of people have a hard time understanding like how much flow and water level, how those two things correlate, but we might as well give the information to the public as much as we can. You can see that the this current stage and flow is normal for this station, so it's actually going to be and it's actually not rising or anything. So that's what that center symbol is, that little hash mark. If it was increasing, there'd be a pointer up. If it was decreasing, there'd be a pointer down. And of course, the symbology would change if by that color, depending on that level. When we go through and look at other stations, this is a station that is in a minor flood status, and you can kind of see once it gets into that minor flood status, we can see the inundation map take over. And that map is actually provided by, we have built libraries based on LIDAR surveys, as well as our own internal ground surveys that are completed by the National or the North Carolina Geodetic Survey. They will actually go out, find a high water mark, survey it, and relate it in real time and in real life what exactly they're seeing. So you can see here that forecast. So after that, what is the current condition, there's kind of like a dotted line at the end that shows what the gauge is expected to be doing. So that gives an idea of the public, like, is it going to keep coming up or is it going to go down? I need to know, so like I'm going to be able to like have to leave my house or anything like that, or even emergency management personnel can make decisions based on that forecasting data of like, is this storm going to get worse? Is the flooding going to get worse? Do we need to have residents leave their homes or shelter in place for this event? So those real-time alerts I was talking about, you can actually go into FIMAN at a station that's like maybe behind your house or something, or close by. There's a river that is always flooding and it's a station of concern that you have. You can go into that station, click on it, and right now FIMAN is set up that if you click alerts, you get everything. So anytime the station water level increases a certain rate or increases at a certain threshold above flooding or in those flood stages, you'll get an alert for increases and decreases. So it's kind of a shotgun blast of information. Right now, I would say the biggest frustration that people have with FIMAN is that you get too much information. So we're going to be rolling out FIMAN 3.0, and at the end of the presentation, I'll kind of give you guys a quick walkthrough of FIMAN 3.0 and its changes. So those alerts, however, you can sign up for email, text message, and they will broadcast to both of those platforms, and you can get more than one station. You can have as many stations as you want. You can have 30 stations and get alerts from every single one of those anytime something goes on. So it's really easy to see when people sign up for an alert how it can be almost overwhelming with the information that you're getting. So we've changed that a little bit, and I'll show you what we did. So this is an example for our scenario and how those flood impacts can be related to not only emergency management coordinators, but just the public in general. Um, this is the little slider graph that you can see on the bottom, and you can actually move that slider and see in real time what the inundation will look like on the map. So as an example, as I move that slider up into the moderate flood range, you can see how that changes. As we get higher and higher, you can start to see the building colors change. And if you direct your attention to the lower left-hand corner, it has that zoom, the buildings affected. And so like if there's 0 to 1 foot of water, you can start to see where those buildings are starting to get water inundation into them. It's just like an estimate. It's like kind of like right there. And you can see as that slider moves up to its highest flood stage, where we think, this is, the 500-year flood event, what buildings would be affected, what roads would be affected. And in this instance, that bridge crossing over that river is going to be unusable, untenable for people to get in and out of that vicinity. So for emergency coordinators, you'd be able to plan out your evacuation routes, be able to identify what buildings are higher risk at certain times, at certain levels, and you can coordinate, like if it's a large care facility like a hospital or a nursing home that has a lot of residents that are going to need to be evacuated, and you be able to coordinate and plan your emergency action plans based on all this information just by scrolling through at a specific gauge and a specific time at a specific level what you need to do. For those flood impacts, where you can pull a report based on that impact at that time for the estimation of like buildings or anything like a cost wise. So if there's cost assessments needed for during flood events or anything, you have that idea of the damaging for any kind of federal assistance from FEMA or local or state agencies that need to know how much damage there is approximately. So that's another good tool, and that is just pulled from state records. So it's not anything that's like oh, it's only this amount of damage at this point in time. It's going to be that this building is affected. This is how much the building is worth. So it just kind of gives a little bit of a snapshot and an estimation of what the real impacts are into the community. For our coastal libraries, we do the exact same thing. But we also have to integrate a little bit of like that storm surge, and we base that on the larger events that have occurred and those flood levels. So not only do we have the inputs from all of our lidar data, but we also have modeling data that will indicate like the worst scenario that we can actually have, and we're working on getting it to where you can actually select historically which storms and what levels they were at. So it's like if it's a category 4 hurricane and, weather forecasters are saying to the public, hey, this is going to be just like Fred was back in the day, people can go on, look at what Fred and what that impact was during that storm, like, oh, it's going to be just like this or similar to this, and then plan accordingly. Again, looking at our forecast data, there's that like dotted line, so you can kind of see where the gauge is at now and what it's expected to be. This gauge in particular is not expected to have any kind of issue for any storm event that's in particular, and it's going to remain at a normal level throughout the event. For those summary reports, you can also pull for each individual station what that gauge is doing at its time and during its forecast. So that could be something useful for emergency coordinators, not only just singular gauges, but you can pull a full report on every gauge that's in FIMAN. If you go to the gauges summary and go to the impact summary, and you can pull exactly what is happening right then at that moment in time with each one of those gauges, what condition they're in and what they're expected to be if they have that forecast capability. So as I've been kind of talking before, like using FIMAN to be able to kind of plan out your emergency action plans and planning for emergencies, we do have that real-time flood information so people can see real-time what's going on. They've got that those alerts, so they're getting constant alerts for each whatever station they've signed up for, and then identify being able to figure out where they need to go if there's action or information given to the public from higher state agencies or federal agencies about flooding or inundation. And then for emergency coordinators, being able to take that your emergency action plan do tabletop exercises. You don't have to wait for a storm until you find out if your plan works or not. You sit down and do a tabletop exercise, go through and see at what level it's like, okay, we're gonna evacuate everybody through this bridge or this corridor, and then the storm is already at this level, and you find out that that is an untenable evacuation route. Now you have to change your plan, but at least you're doing it before people are in danger. So this is an example where this is Greensboro, North Carolina, and looking at the river and how it's starting to flood and impact those areas that are low lying. But as soon as you start to see those areas start to get flooded and higher, the residents that are first affected by floodwaters, and then what the main areas in town are actually going to be affected roadway wise for traffic. So already at a fairly low level, the bridges across the river from Greenville will be affected by floodwaters, and though they might be minimal, it's always kind of a good plan to have, make sure people know not to drive through floodwaters because you don't know what the condition of those bridges are or those roadways are under that water. Across, you can also see when those municipal buildings will be affected and have to get some kind of evacuation, and you can estimate the number of people that are going to be displaced by any one event at any given time. So again, this is kind of just that quick summary, looking at the worst flooding event and being able to plan what buildings and what areas are affected, and coordinating what you'd need to do for your emergency action plan in that area. This is my last little portion here where I'm going to talk about FIMAN 3.0. Let me see if I can properly share the website here. Oh, here we go. So this is what FIMAN 3.0 is going to look like. It's just a little bit different, very similar integration and user interface to be able to kind of look at it, see what the levels are going to be at, what the current conditions are with all the gauges. And I had mentioned, if there's a station on the rise, that symbology is going to change to the little arrow. You can see that the rising trend is going to be it's coming up, but it's still within its normal range. You can look at the historical peaks at this site and what that was. This one does not have a scenario or forecast. So let me go to a station real quick that does. And you can determine that by, there's two rings. So for example, Lumberton River, this station right here, the water intake of the Lumber River, it has an inside ring and an outside ring. The one with the outside ring, that's the forecasted data that's actually presented. So you can have the public understand like what the actual current condition is with the inside ring, and then the outside ring is what it's going to be. So right now, this river is going to be showing that its condition is normal, and it's reported that it's going to be forecasted to also be in that normal range. Unfortunately or fortunately, right now we don't have any rivers in North Carolina that are flooding, so I can't really show you the ones that are going crazy. There's Wilmington Cape Fear River always seems to be in danger of flooding, but I think that's mostly the tidal influence that's there. So this is a perfect example. You have not only the tidal influence that shows it as that it's normal most of the time, but it can get it into that minor flooding just from tides. So if you have high risk areas like Wilmington that are kind of in fear of flooding, even daylight flooding or sunny day flooding, this would be a good tool to have for regions like that. And this is one that does have that scenario and forecast where you can go in and see exactly what is going to happen at different levels. You can hide that and see like, oh, these buildings right here are always going to be affected at that period of time at that flood level. And then the forecast again, being able to kind of see what is going to happen and how many hours away the potential flooding would be. So it gives you the level on the top and the hour on the bottom of, from the time that it's going to happen. So kind of gives public an idea of what is going to happen and how soon that's going to be. The main change that we did for FIMAN 3.0 is the alerts. So if I say I wanted to sign up for an alert here, you just click on the subscribe, and then I have a government employee and sign in, but you can sign in with various um, applications and platforms. So if you don't have a government employee sign in, it's really easy to sign up with your Gmail account. So if I sign in and look here for Wilmington, I want to subscribe to this station, and it automatically gives me these choices. So nothing is selected right now. I have to actively want something to look at. So say I wanted to only know when moderate flooding has happened, and I wanted to say rises above that moderate flooding level. That is the only alert I'm going to get unless I sign up for other things. And so um, that's going to be. If I wanted to create my own alert, I can, type it alert one, and I want the elevation to be something that's, right in the middle here. So say I know my house is going to flood at that level. I shift, whoops, I have to shift it manually here. Let's go with 5 feet, and it's going to be that alert that I created is going to be my own. So you can even create your own and have it specific to what you want to do. If I wanted to unsubscribe from this alert because the storm has passed, I'm tired of getting emails, I move away from Wilmington, the easiest way to do that is click unsubscribe. Click continue, and then as soon as that bar is gone, your subscriptions are done. So we've had a lot of people contact me directly or contact FIMAN Help, where you go in here and you'll be able to subscribe or unsubscribe. It tells you just how to do it. Some people have had issues with being able to do it themselves. Uh, Either they sign up with a subscription that is through an email address that they no longer have access to or control over, or a phone number that's changed and they can't change it. We were able to go in and help them remove those alerts. I guess if there's any other questions or any other concerns, I'd be happy to take them right now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Derek. We already have one question in the chat from Kate Morano. How were the flood thresholds determined for each gauge?
So a lot of that is determined by like LiDAR. So we have that those coverages maps that we've actually created and made. We'll go to each station and have reference marks at each gauge and what the elevation is of that gauge, and determine like where we know we're going to be flooding, and then the elevation of the surrounding area. That inundation is literally just built up by the library. So it's a GIS, ArcGIS based model. So everything is just tied into those surveys, and we ground truth them at the gauge. We also have, whenever there's an event, and we have reference or high water marks that are left by that event, or even go out while there's still flooding, where we didn't anticipate flooding to be before. We'll go out, take a reference mark, and plot that real-time data into our model. There are always factors that change stuff, like um, inundation can be affected by a beaver building a dam that's not known about, or log jams that occur, debris that builds up during storm surges, and so like that can change obviously how flooding is affected. But this at least gives residents an idea initially what that model is telling them what the flooding is going to look like.
Hmm.
So great question, and sorry I didn't cover that well enough.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Derek. We're going to take Lindsay's question from the chat, and then Roderick, you'll be up after that. Lindsay Wallace's question is, are the water levels calculated based on measured flow rate or based on pressure sensors?
So we've got a variety of different stream gauges. The flow rate doesn't necessarily correlate to water level. Water level is independent of flow rate. So you can have a channelized that like has a fairly low water level, but it's got a lot of flow rate, right? So the water level is largely dependent on the channel morphology, and if there's floodplains and stuff that's coming across. But we have not only pressure transducers, we have radar, we have ultrasonic sensors, all that measure the different levels of that stream as it's coming through. and we have not only our measured water level or water elevation at that site, we calculate and coordinate what the stage is at that site. So stage and elevation not necessarily the same, but are usually loosely correlated. Stage of zero meaning there would be a zero flow or zero water in the channel. If it's at 10 feet, that could be an elevation of 500 feet for an actual land elevation. And I'm not trying to confuse anybody, but all of our gauges are NAVDA 88 right now, and I know there's a soon to be push to move to a different geoid ellipsoid to calculate that, which is happening this year. We're already moving and doing those calculations to make it a smooth transition, so everybody is on the same page with elevation and where that stage is calculated at.
Oh, fantastic. Multiple levels of challenges there. Thanks,
Yep,
Derek.
so many.
And yeah. Roderick, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks. Rod Scott with the Flood Mitigation Industry Association. Derek, this starts to get into two areas. One is that one of our sectors in our industry is the early warning sector, and there must be 10 different non-USGS products out there that are just exploding into the marketplace.
Yep.
Everybody's trying to get early warning networks set
Yep.
up. And the UN Disaster Risk Reduction Program at the UN has mandated that all underdeveloped countries get, and which would equate to our underdeveloped or income challenged disadvantaged communities in our country,
Yep.
early warning,
Yep.
especially when you get into those hills and riverines. It could be 3 canyons over getting a deluge of water in a storm that only lasts 15 minutes, but that's coming down, and you got to be able to monitor multiple. So the great thing about all these products that are coming out is they're compact, they're fairly inexpensive compared to the $15,000 for a USGS setup, and they're going up to different satellites, so there's not that 15-minute delay that USGS has. So it's just exploding out there, and that's why we've kind of brought that sector down in under our industry now, because it's just going to be huge. It's going to be billions and billions of dollars, and we're going to need to have. It's going to create an industry of maintenance of companies that can go out and deploy and maintain those, as opposed to saddling that onto the local governments, general fund revenue, staff, parks, public works, whatever. They're busy enough, especially.
I can
If you
attest to
get
that.
spread out. Yeah, so we're really looking at that. The other side of it I want to share with everybody is the non-residential dry flood-proofing techniques that we use on buildings. That's just an exploding sector where we bolt panels or planks or whatever onto buildings so that we minimize their flood damage in an event. Well, it used to be 12 hours of alert time. Now, with the advances in the National Weather Service, we're able to go out 24 days. Now, I live in Louisiana, where we usually get 3 or 4 days with our eyeballs getting big and everything coming up out of the lower Caribbean, but especially in 20 and 21 with 5 hurricanes those 24 months.
Yeah, it was a busy year.
So yeah, it's shredded us. We're done. There's no wind insurance, and it's a nightmare. Yeah, I don't know where we're going to get people to service the oil rigs so that we don't have to pay $20 a gallon. Can't live here if you can't afford it. So the deal is that the ASCE, the American Society of Civil Engineering, sets all the standards for the flood calculations. ASCE 24. That's undergoing a revision right now. We are going to the 500-year flood zone. Everybody, just to let you know, it's been working that way with the federal flood risk management system and all this different stuff that's been building. But basically, we're going to be building everything to the 500-year flood zone, not the 100-year flood zone.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you get 100-year floods multiple times a year in this.
Everything's 500-year now. I mean, come on, 100 years like a spring storm. Which is terrible. It's just we have to adapt and we have to do it right. So the deal is that we're going to require 24-hour warning for these deployable systems to be bolted on the buildings. That's going to create a whole nother industry, local industries that contractors will go out and bolt that stuff on the buildings. kind of trying to put Service Master out of business. We'd rather bolt stuff on buildings and clean up a business afterwards, right? So prevention is an
A
ounce
little
a
bit
cure.
cheaper,
So
maybe.
yeah, so those are just things to share with the group.
Mm.
This industry is all about this early warning, and we're really excited about all the products coming out. You guys have done a great job. You're about a million years ahead of a lot of states, and we'd like
Mm.
to make sure the other states get caught up. Thanks.
Well, I
And
appreciate that. Thank you.
Derek, I'd like to circle back to one thing Roderick said about maintenance, and you touched on it in your presentation.
Yep.
And could you expand a little bit on who is tasked with maintaining the water gauges and the system itself?
Well, thankfully, the USGS takes care of their own. So, but if I notice one of their gauges down or like we're not getting signal, I always reach out to my counterparts over there and be like, "Hey, what's going on with this gauge? You guys have issues?
Mhm.
I'm going to be in the area. You want me to take a look at it?" I may or may not have 2640 key still from my time in the USGS, which is just this. It's the same lock that they all use. So, but anyway, the largely of that portion with the state-owned gauges falls on me and my staff, which
Okay.
is two other guys. So it's three of us covering the entire state of North Carolina. We have gauges that we own over 300. So it's a constant thing. I have an Eastern Tech and a Western Tech. So in the mountains and on the coast, and I'm kind of right here in the middle in Raleigh. And we're always out and about doing stuff. I wouldn't say putting out forest fires as it were, but we've had gauges that have been out in service for over 10 years, and you have equipment that's out there in the weather 24/7,
Yeah.
365. They're going to degrade eventually.
Yeah.
So our biggest push is now we've been able to successfully elicit funds on an annual basis for gauge maintenance, which is huge. Before it's kind of like I'm trying to like rob Peter to pay Paul to keep these gauges running. The fact that
Mhm.
they didn't have anything before this is just kind of astounding. But keeping that in mind, it's like even if it's like, hey, the gauge is working now, it's working great. 10 years down the road, you always have to consider what you're going to need to do. We are always replacing metal brackets that rust out. Even stainless steel only has a certain amount of lifetime in the coastal conditions that we have out here. Um, and electronic equipment does not like water as much as you can waterproof it and get everything like there's a certain factor. The elements do affect these gauges. So when building up a network and everything like that, always allow for additional cost over time to be able to replace, repair, and refurbish gauges. We have done 30 gauges this year where we've upgraded from systems that were like VHF radios in the mountains of Western North Carolina. Used to be the only way, the only telemetry that you could have. As cell towers build up and things become a little bit more accessible, we've been able to create those gauges and put them on cell networks, which are a little bit more reliable in the sense that you get a lot faster data turnover. VHF is still a great access point for some of the ones that are so remote that even a satellite you can't get out of a canyon. So having a repeater that's nearby and being able to ping that repeater and get that
Mhm.
information out to the public is huge. But
Mm.
now those repeater systems are also that's 1970s technology that's been out there since the 70s, and like so much of the industry has moved away from all that old technology. Just finding the parts to fix it has been a challenge.
Of
So
course.
yeah, we do have maintenance issues. We employ as much as we can our partners with those county emergency managers to be able to be like, hey, this gauge on Dare out in Dare County, it's out on the Barrier Islands that it's going to take me 3 days to get to. Can you go out and check? It's like it's a 5 minute drive down the road for that gentleman to go and look. It's like, oh yeah, somebody stole the solar panel. Great, we'll be out there in a few days with another one. Which that
Mm.
actually is probably the public is their own worst enemy. Either damaging gauges
Mm.
just for the fun of it, or stealing 5-watt solar panels that literally would take all day to charge a cell phone. It's a little ridiculous, but it's also a reality. People see something that they might be able to take advantage of, and they're gonna do it, especially in areas that are unfortunately low income, where they're served greater by the ability of those gauges to be there in those communities. But it's a resource that they don't understand or know about, or the consequences of their actions,
Yeah.
um, and it's
And
difficult to deal with.
Yeah, boy, that's where education and outreach becomes so important.
And
We're going
local
to take.
ownership and private sector, get
Mhm.
that local company that's an electrical supply
Yep.
Yeah.
company or electrical maintenance company to do that, and they get paid to do it. And they'll guard it with their lives.
That's right. We're going
They'll
to
be
take
on point all night.
two more questions. Jeff Morris, you're up next, and then Kate Morano after Jeff.
Well, I actually had two more questions. No, anyway. Oh,
That's not allowed, Jeff.
I'll save one for you. So you had mentioned, Derek, that you were looking at the worst case scenario. And
Mhm.
so I want to see if you can elaborate on that. And actually, what you just mentioned there at the end was, the individuals that are out there. I was interested in seeing, do you have the first floor elevations? And is this information accessible to the individuals to identify what their risks are during different types of events?
Mm.
Yes. So as Mr. Scott was already saying, like the 500-year flood event, that's like our worst case scenario. So our libraries are built like that. That major flooding is built out above the 500-year flood level, and so all of that survey information, the lidar, all of our national or North Carolina Geodetic Survey guys going out and taking surveys, they are relating that to the elevation that would be the 500-year event. All of our gauges are survivable above that level as well. So it's no good if you install a gauge and it's going to get wiped out by the flood. It's got to be able to report, those water levels all the way through an event. And so, like when we were installing equipment, it's above that 500-year event. As to your availability of the public for survey data, so those libraries are built and people can look at they can relate to them at my location and see all the gauges that are nearby, and they can based on where their house is, they can see like that encroachment of the water in that inundation map. But we don't have like a database to provide to the public to be like, in our ArcGIS system, this is the surveyed elevation at your house, because that would be impossible to do for everybody and everything. So we have, that lidar is what has got the most coverage, and it is truth with individual surveys at known geodetic markers around North Carolina. We have what's called CORS, the constant observation. Oh man, forgot what the other R is. Or yeah, so but basically it's like it's constantly taking survey data and relating like this is the elevation here right now, and that data is being pulled by Weather Service, FAA, NOAA to be able to like coordinate and collaborate what elevations there are throughout the state. And it's a very large mapping network. So we do go after floods, like I had mentioned, and into those areas that's like, hey, they experienced crazy amount of flooding here. We need to make sure that this is accurate. We go out, do high water marks, and measure those high water marks to validate our conditions. Does that answer your question?
Oops, you're
It
muted.
does.
Okay.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff. And Kate Morano, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you, Derek. I am a big fan of FIMAN and have been for a long time. I'm curious if there was uh, what the reasoning is behind not displaying flood depth, and instead just displaying those, inundated area polygons. If you could explain that a little bit.
I can. So it deals a lot with the bandwidth that's available. So if you think about a storm event and you got everybody trying to sign on to Feynman and figure out what's going on, we get, millions of hits during an event. And so if you were like, you think about the raster that's developed, we already have kind of like when we move that scenario, it shows how much water there is, and it just shows like where the water is. So
Mhm.
um, it is in a way showing the depth, but it's not. It's related to like just the stage of at that gauge, which is all we can do um, without taking a whole bunch of bandwidth. I mean, if we had a color raster that shows its depth over time based on the lidar survey and everything, that would be very cool. And I think maybe we could eventually get to that point at one time where you can show, green is like less than a foot of water, and deep purple is like 5 feet of water. It's
Yeah.
largely based on that land survey and that land elevation that's around that gauge. So that would be something that we could eventually look at doing. But right now, it's our idea of, hey, we have an idea of like what area is being affected by water, and what that public just needing to know that information. And at the very least, they have an idea like, hey, there's going to be water here, and if that this building says that it's affected like 2 to 3 feet of water in this building, that building is down the street for me. I'm probably going to have about the same amount. So there's a little bit of interpretation and interpolation that needs to happen in the mind of the public. But we're always working to try to create a better product. And so like our launching in this new FIMAN 3.0 is like the next step in making it better for them. And we will eventually be working to try to get a little bit, better symbology and better graphical representation of that water level.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Great question. And boy, as we've seen, a lot of challenges associated with bringing all the information together in this FIMAN platform. And this is the product of decades of work, right, Derek? And we're so excited to see the launch of FIMAN 3.0 coming out very, very soon.
Yep.
I want to take a minute to thank you so much, Derek, for taking time today to share with us. I do see a few more questions coming into the chat. And Derek, if you wouldn't mind, please drop your email
Yep.
into the chat box so that any lingering questions can be forwarded your way. And I
I'll try
have,
to also easily answer those questions real quick in the chat before like everybody goes away and everything. So I can give you guys that info as well.
perfect. Thank you, Derek. I have one quick announcement before we wrap up today. The weather's heating up around here, and so are we. Introducing the SCDRP Partner Pick Summer Series. SCDRP partners, you get to pick our summer speakers. During the months of June, July, and August, SCDRP will be showcasing speakers of your choice. So please send in your suggestions via the Google form linked in this morning's newsletter, which should have arrived in your inbox at about 10:30, or email us anytime at scdrp@socorro.org. From whom would you like to hear an update? You can suggest a particular person, organization, corporation, group, professional sector, etc. Would you like to introduce your suggested speaker? Would you like to host the question and answer portion with them? What topics would you like to learn more about during our summer series? And would you personally like to be a speaker during our SCDRP 2024 Partner Pick Summer Series? We can't wait to hear from you. And we're going to use the final remaining minutes for partner sharing time. You can turn on your camera, raise your virtual hand, raise your real hand, or put announcements into the chat box. What announcements do you have today? Lindy Betzold, I see you up first.
Hi there, good morning. I wanted to announce something that just was announced from our office today, and I'm going to put the link in the chat. It is the eNow data, the National Ocean Watch NOAA economics data is now available for the U.S. Caribbean. It's long been known that we had a data gap in the Caribbean for this data, and we've been able to use funding to address this gap. So it's a data set that features time series data focused on 6 economic factors that are dependent on oceans and Great Lakes, including living resources, offshore mineral extraction, marine construction, boat building, transportation, tourism, recreation. So this data set's produced by NOAA in partnership with BEA, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and Bureau of Labor Statistics, as well as the U.S. Census Bureau. So I've forwarded the official announcement to Heather to include in the newsletter, but just wanted to make sure folks were aware of this new great data set for the Caribbean. Thank you.
Ooh, fantastic. Thanks, Lindy. And Catherine Egan from NOAA.
Hello, I'm actually going to let Alyssa start, if that's okay, because our announcements are tied to each other. So I'll pass it over to Alyssa.
Thanks,
Fantastic.
Catherine. I just have one quick announcement. NOAA's Southeastern Caribbean Regional Team is having our annual Hurricane Awareness Webinar Series. We had our first one This past Tuesday, it was really successful. We had about 300 folks online. Our next one is May 10th, and that's going to be all in Spanish. So we're hoping folks can share out with their Spanish-speaking audiences. And then I think Catherine's going to drop the link for details for the other 3 in this series that are happening all throughout the month of May. So hopefully y'all can join us. And that's all I have, and I'll pass it back to Catherine.
Thanks, Alyssa. Yeah, and if you missed Tuesday's webinar, we will have a recording of it on CCART's YouTube channel. We're just putting Spanish and English captions on it, so it takes us a couple weeks to get that out the door. And that'll be the same for the rest of our webinars in the series. I also wanted to let the group know that as part of the Southeastern Caribbean regional team, we're holding a disaster workshop and exercise actually in Jacksonville. Heather, coming up here at the end of May, we're hoping to meet with on-the-ground partners with the city of Jacksonville to basically let them know what NOAA's role is in the response to disasters within that region, and then we're going to take them through a tabletop exercise for a Category 4 hurricane. So I dropped the link to that there. There is going to be a virtual component to that, and if you have partners in Jacksonville who would be interested in knowing more, you can have them sign up or reach out to Emily Carpenter, who's the person from our team that's running that. I also wanted to let folks know that our upcoming NOAA in the Caribbean Partners meeting is going to be happening really soon. So many links to share with you all. We're also in the process of updating our website, so bear with me. That's the website. Here's the meeting registration link. And if you'd like to sign up for our NOAA in the Caribbean listserv, you can do so here. So you'll get more information about the partners meeting. Basically, we just update our partners in the Caribbean on what NOAA is up to, and this meeting will be focused on ecosystem restoration. So if anyone has questions, I'll put my email in the chat. Feel free to just reach out to me with anything, even if it's just general NOAA related. I'm happy to answer them. So thanks, Heather. Sorry for taking up so much time.
No problem. Thank you. And please note, everyone, we will download the chat box and we will add these links and announcements to our next newsletter. So great resources. Thank you so much, Alyssa and Catherine. Roderick, you have 2 minutes.
Won't even take me that much. I'd like to propose that we do this as a session at some point. 2 weeks before Christmas, I got a phone call. One of the from an organization. One of the biggest issues we have with federal grants in this country and our commonwealths and territories is, where do you find the money to pay for that project and then seek reimbursement? Because all federal grants are reimbursement, and that's why FEMA's having a dickens of a time getting the money out for BRIC and some of these others, especially in disadvantaged communities. They don't have general fund revenues to pay for grants. So there is a private organization that has raised $1 billion. They pioneered it in the Virgin Islands and a couple other places post-disaster to do debris removal, because where do you find the money to pay those people with those big, huge trucks to pull all the debris out? Good Lord. It's just, where do we find the money? Show us the money. And there's no money up front. And so what we've done now is we've brought that organization into our nonprofit organization. We've had some sessions with FEMA and their legal counsel. Actually, the president of the organization was former NFIP legal counsel in DC, so knows from which they come. Basically, within 3 weeks of getting your notice to proceed on a grant, a local community can get 80% of that grant project funding up front. They help come in and supervise so that nobody gets deobligated, because that letter is their only security. They don't get any collateral for these loans. It's based on the grant. So it's a huge breakthrough. We anticipate maybe a half dozen more of these funds within 10 years if this really works. Looks like FEMA will have guidance for this for next year's grants, published by ASFPM conference in Salt Lake City in June. This is a whole new world, and it supplements what didn't happen with the Storm Act, because we were supposed to have a lot of capital to do this kind of stuff, and it didn't work. The Storm Act is hobbled. So this is huge. $1 billion available for these elevation grants, dry flood proofing grants, nature-based solutions grants, debris removal, all sorts of stuff. So we'd love to do a session with them on this program in coming months. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Roderick. Yeah, such an incredibly important piece of the puzzle. I'd like to hear more about that. Thank you. So with this, we will conclude our April monthly partnership meeting. A very special thank you to our super speaker, Derek Frohbieter, and thank you for joining us today. It's been wonderful seeing everyone. Have a great day.